Most people think that if they're good enough at what they do, then people will trust them and buy from them automatically. I wish it was that simple. Because if you're the kind of person that's watching this video, I'm assuming that you know what you're doing, that you do good work, that you have good expertise. The thing is, if you don't understand what I'm about to explain in this video, then you're devaluing that work and devaluing that expertise without even realizing it. Because you could be making so much more. Now, this video isn't about pricing strategies or sales tactics. It's about why people trust some people more. And why that trust is what actually sets the ceiling on how much you can charge and how much you can earn. Because the way that you're communicating, the things that you're doing, and more importantly, the things that you're not doing, are sending subtle signals when you speak to the people that you're talking to that make them trust you less. And when you have this, it limits the amount of influence that you have, and it costs you the ability to charge and earn more. So in this video, I'm going to break down what exactly those communication mistakes are and give you practical action steps that you can take to fix it so that you can not just charge more, but also help people more and also influence people more as a result, no matter who it is that you're speaking to. Now, I'm not here to give you this information as manipulation tactics that you can use to trick people into trusting you. I'm giving it to you so that you can better understand how you can better connect with the people that you speak to. So in the context of this video, it will be your ideal client, customer, or viewer. But even outside of that, it helps you so much in your personal relationships and the people that you speak to on the daily. Now, trust is actually where most high performers go wrong. They assume that value and expertise automatically equals trust. And yes, they are very important aspects of trust, but trust is actually built on two things. They're very simple, but they have a very high ceiling in how much you can master them. And it's belief and rapport. Belief is how much they believe in you and what you can do. And rapport is the connection that you have with the person that you're speaking to, how in sync you are with them. If you have these two things and you know how to master them, you can build trust in practically any person that you speak to without even having to think about it too much. Now, how do you actually improve belief and rapport? You need to focus on improving both the internal aspects of your speech and the external aspects of your speech. So what do I mean by that? Internal speech is going to be the thinking patterns and the frameworks that you apply to your speech. And then external speech is going to be the actual speaking techniques that you use, body language, and all of those different things. Now, most communication coaches will just focus on the external aspects of your speech. Say this, use this tone of voice, speak like this. And yes, those are very helpful. The thing is, if there's a mismatch between your external speech and your internal speech, your thinking patterns and the frameworks that you apply to it, people will pick up on that. There'll be this subtle, unconscious feeling in the back of their head, thinking, I'm not sure if I really trust this person. And I'm sure you probably felt that too, where you speak to someone and you can feel that they're being disingenuous, or you feel that what they're saying doesn't actually make sense or isn't true. When you have that feeling, it's because the person's internal speech isn't lined up with their external speech. So my approach is to attack both. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Now, how do we actually improve your internal speech? So that's what's actually going to improve the belief aspect of trust, how much they believe in you. Now, 90% of communication is actually in here, in your mind, because most communication is nonverbal. It's subtle. A lot of the time, what you don't say is more important than what you do say. Now, your words, your delivery, and your body language are just the physical expression of your thoughts and beliefs. So if you can take control of that, you'll be a master communicator. Now, when you're anxious about being able to deliver, so say you're on a call trying to convince someone to buy your service, for example, and you have this feeling in the back of your head that, oh man, what if I don't deliver? That's going to show in your speech. Or if you're so nervous about not trying to sound salesy, that's also going to show. or if you have to record content and you're afraid of people judging you or you're afraid of how you'll be perceived, that's also going to show in your communication. You see, I learned this the hard way. I learned that your product or your service or the thing that you're selling, whatever it is, and again, this isn't just in sales, but just in general, I learned that it being valuable isn't actually enough the hard way. I remember when I first started my first online business, I went and I did a bunch of cold outreach. I didn't have very much experience in sales, but it didn't even matter because I had these beliefs in the back of my head like, oh no, what if I can't deliver for the people that I sell to? This is actually crazy. So I'd hop on calls with people. And even though I actually knew how to do the work that I was offering to them, and I explained it very well, they wouldn't trust me. Even though I was literally giving them a free trial, I was giving it to them for free. The thing is, because I had this belief in the back of my head, whenever I would speak, they could pick up on that. And it made it so that it was riskier to trust me and literally take a free service than it was to not solve their problems. You see, that's how important this is, because this is why people that scam make so much money. Not because what they're selling is inherently valuable, because they're scamming people, it's a lie. It's because they're very good at lying and faking this belief aspect. And the thing that's so interesting about this is that, I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're an honest person. And your honesty can either help you or it can hurt you. The way that it would hurt you is if you have some fear or some belief or some limiting belief in the back of your head that's not productive. When you speak, even if it's not consciously at the front of your mind, you're going to be honest about that. And it's going to show, even if the thing isn't even true, the belief that you're having or the fear that you're having isn't even true, it's going to show to the people that you speak to and they'll not trust you. Compared to if your thoughts were working for you and they were actually productive, then you'd be honest about that. And then the people that you speak to would pick up on that too. So, how do you actually fix your internal speech? What do you do to fix this problem? The first thing is to actually uncover what those limiting beliefs that you have are. Now, if you're watching this, there's a chance that you might be going like, oh, I don't have any limiting beliefs. But if you really sit down and think to yourself and just take out a piece of paper and write down, okay, what limiting beliefs do I actually have? Because even the most high performers have some kind of limiting belief at the back of their head. Maybe it's fear of failure. Maybe it's the fear of them not being good enough. Or maybe you think that, oh no, if I continue to sound salesy, then I won't be able to sell anything. Whatever limiting belief or fear that you have in your head, when you write it down and you look at it and you see it for what it is, you can work through it and ask yourself, is this actually valid? Does this actually make sense? What world would this make sense in? And if you work through it on a piece of paper, it actually shows you that it's not that big of a deal. Because it seems so big when it's in your head, or even invisible when it's in your head. But when you have it physically in front of you, you can physically see and read it. It works wonders for you being able to overcome it. So once you're able to be aware of what those things are and work through it, it'll help you so much. Another thing that will help you with this is mindfulness meditation. This is something I talked about in my last video about getting over anxiety when you're speaking in high-stakes situations. Mindfulness meditation is seen as this woo thing to some people, but in reality, what it really is just training your mind to be able to be aware of your thoughts and in control of them, and you're able to bring yourself back to the present moment. So if you practice that for just a few minutes a day, it'll help you so much with just being present and not having your thoughts work against you. Another thing is to trust your instinct more when you speak and when you think. Because what a lot of intelligent people do, because if you're watching this, you're probably an intelligent person. The thing is, intelligent people tend to overthink a lot because you have to think through a lot of the situations that you have to be in throughout your life. The thing is, if you overthink, especially when you're speaking, and you have all kinds of crazy thoughts in your mind telling you, oh yeah, this thing might happen, or this thing could happen, or this thing could happen, then it's gonna make your speech so much worse. And I even experienced this myself, where me as a communication coach, if I think super hard in my head about trying my best to sound the most articulate or using big words like some people like to do to try and make themselves sound smart, I sound worse. So whenever I'm able to be present and just fully in the moment when I speak, and I'm just in a flow state, just speaking like how I would normally speak to the people that I speak to throughout the day-to-day of my life, I speak so much better and so much more articulately. So if you're able to be present and just trust your instinct a lot more, because a lot of the time, our overthinking analysis isn't even very helpful or even right in the first place. If you trust your instinct more when you speak, then you'll be able to cut out a lot more of those unhelpful and unproductive thoughts that are muddying up your communication. So these are some great ways to be able to fix your internal speech and make sure that it's in line with the external, with the things that you're actually saying. Now, let's talk about external speech. So what are some things in external speech that will actually help you? You see, external speech is what actually builds the rapport aspect, is what builds the connection aspect of when you're speaking to people. So I'm going to start by focusing on techniques that you can use to keep it in line with the internal speech that you have before. And then afterwards, I'm going to go over some specific techniques that you can use and tricks, and some really powerful ones too, that you can use to directly build rapport with the people that you speak to, not just keeping it in line with what you're thinking. Now, what are some things that you can do to keep it in line with your internal speech? So I'm going to keep this pretty short, because the things that I could go in depth in and I would talk about forever, and it would waste a lot of time because we're focusing on trust in this video. So the first thing is to speak with conviction. If you speak with conviction, then people will feel the belief behind what you're saying, and they'll trust you more instead of making it seem like you're unsure about what you're saying. So one quick thing that you can do to fix that is get rid of what I like to call upward inflection, or it's not what I like to call it. It's literally what it's called. Upward inflection is when you're speaking and you have a sentence and you end it like this instead of like this. This is upward inflection, and this is downward inflection. When you speak with when you end a sentence with downward inflection, what that does is it signals authority in that you know what you're saying, that you're really ending a statement. But the thing with upward inflection is it's similar to what it is when you're asking a question. So when you end a sentence with upward inflection, it almost sounds like you're asking a question, even though you're not. And what that does is it makes it seem like you're questioning yourself, like you don't even believe what you're saying. And when it seems like you don't even believe what you're saying, it doesn't matter how well thought out your argument is, how good the facts are that you have behind you, or how good your proof is or your testimonials. People will not trust you if you speak in a way that seems like you're unsure of what you're saying. Now, another thing that you can do to improve the conviction that you have when you speak is to change the language that you use. So this will come slightly naturally once you fix the internal aspects of your speech. The thing is, if you're deliberate about it, it'll come a lot easier and it'll make a lot more of a difference when you speak. So what a lot of people will do is, especially if they haven't fixed their internal speech, is they'll cover their bases when they speak. They'll cover for the possibility that what they're doing might not work, even though there's probably a good chance that it will. So what they'll do is they'll say things like, this should, or this might, or I think that this will work. And when you do that, even if there's a very, very high chance of what you're saying being true, it makes it seem like you're slightly less sure of yourself. So if you use words like, I will, or I know, or this is going to happen, then people will pick up on that conviction as well. So that's a quick fix that you can do too. Now, another thing that you can do to improve your conviction is also to replace filler with pauses. Because filler words that you use, it's a very common thing for people to use filler words. Go like, the thing is when you use filler words, it slightly makes it seem like you don't know what you're talking about. You seem a little bit less sure. If you go like, and you say, I hate when people use the word, because I actually don't know what you're saying when you ask, but generally, Using filler words makes it so that people just seem as if they don't know what they're saying. So if you can cut these out, the easier way to cut them out is by just pausing in place of when you would use a filler word. And that actually makes you seem a lot more confident because it shows that you're comfortable in the silence. Now, outside of conviction, what's another thing that you can do to keep your internal speech in line with your external speech? One thing that you can do is to be deliberate about which emotions that you convey during your speech. So what I see a lot of people do, especially in the online business space online, is they speak with a very monotone voice. They're like the verbal equivalent of texting someone LOL or LMAO without actually smiling on their face. And the thing about that is it makes it seem like they don't believe what they're saying because there's a mismatch between the words that they say and the emotions behind it. So, of course, there's a time and a place for using emotions when you speak. I'm not saying that you have to be some happy-go-lucky guy who's constantly cracking jokes here and there. The thing is, when you don't have any emotion behind your speech, or when you're using the wrong emotions in your speech, it feels off. And it creates that feeling that I was talking about before where people can pick up on your speech and go like, I'm not so sure that this person actually means what they're saying. So, for example, if you're speaking about something that you're going to do and you speak with a lot of conviction and you have that emotion of conviction, of enthusiasm when you say it, and you're like, yes, I'm going to do this and then this is what's going to happen and it's going to completely change everything. Now, what that's going to do compared to if you said, yeah, we're going to do this and it's going to completely change everything. What that does is that it makes the emotion match up. And the way that that's super helpful for you, even outside of it matching up, is that people pick up on the emotions that you convey. And when I say pick up, I don't mean that they just view it or perceive it. They feel it. Have you ever been in a situation, say it was a very high-stakes situation, and someone was speaking to you, and they were very nervous and shaky in that situation, and then it made you nervous too? It's because you picked up on their emotion. So, on the flip side, you can also use this to your advantage. If you ever want someone to feel a specific emotion, feel that emotion yourself and let that be conveyed in your speech. So again, with the example of conviction, you feel, if you're speaking a little bit more enthusiastically about what you're convicted about, the other person will feel enthusiastic about it too. Now again, this doesn't mean that you need to be over the top in your expressions. It just means that you shouldn't sound like a robot and that you should actually make sure that you're choosing which emotions you want to convey deliberately and doing it in a way that's effectively making it so that it matches up with what you're saying. Now, in terms of techniques that you can use in your external speech to directly build rapport, I have a few things, and one of them is very powerful. The first one is something that a lot of people will hear. And whenever they hear this advice, they always sigh. They always go like, oh my gosh, it's this again. And the reason why is because it's not explained very well when people explain it. And they'll just give the most surface level explanation. And of course, people aren't going to listen to that advice because it's so surface level and basic. And they go like, I know how to do that. But it actually goes a lot deeper than you'd think. And this advice is active listening. Now, if you were like me and you heard that, you'd probably go like, oh my gosh, okay, here we go again with the active listening. The thing is, people don't actually know how to implement this effectively and in a way that builds trust. They might be communicating it or doing it in a way that makes them, listen well and hear the other person out well, but they're not using it to directly build rapport. So how can you do that? And the first thing is to focus on what you're actually listening for. Because most people will just focus on the words that are being said. And yeah, that's a great place to start, but you can actually do so much more than that. You see, instead of just looking at the words, look at how the words are said. Look at the specific body language that they have. Look at the subtext. Look at the things that they're not saying. If they say something and maybe they scratch their eye a little bit or something like that, or they twitch a little bit, there could be something else that they're not saying or something else that they're feeling in that moment that you can dig deeper on. So when you notice all of these things and you look at the full picture, again, like with what we were saying about how the internal speech, the nonverbal, a lot of the time speaks louder than the external, and you pick up on these things, you can ask better questions. You can ask deeper, open-ended questions and go like, you seemed a little bit unsure of that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? A little bit more about what you meant by that? Or it seemed like you think this. Am I right about that? Just based off of things that they didn't even say, or small, subtle things that they did. So active listening is never just about the words. It's about the full picture of the communication. And one of the ways that you can pick up on this easier is by just improving how present you are in a conversation, not focusing as much on yourself. Because when you're focusing so much on yourself and what you're going to say, but not just what you're going to say, how you feel, how you look in the conversation, if you look authoritative, if you look smart, if you get rid of all of those thoughts about yourself and focus fully on the other person, it makes it so much easier. So again, with what I talked about earlier about getting rid of overthinking and being more present with mindfulness meditation, using those tips, that'll help you so much here because you'll be not in your own head when you're in a conversation. And that'll be so useful for building trust because the other person will actually feel like you understand them. Another way to improve on this too is by repeating the language that they say back to them when they speak. That's a very simple one. It's a very common thing that people tell you in active listening, but it's very powerful. If someone says something to you and they're like, yeah, so say for example, you're trying to sell them something and they're explaining the problem that they're having. And you're like, yeah, so I'm just a little bit concerned about the cost of this, for example. And you go like, so it seems like you're nervous about the cost. Is there anything that you felt could be different about that? I don't know. That was just a random question that I asked at the top of my head, that I thought off the top of my head for that scenario. But when you're able to repeat what they say, it shows that you're actually listening and people feel, okay, wow, this person actually understands me. The last tool that you can use for active listening that I'm going to go over here is using silence to get people to open up. You can use silence as a tool. Silence is so powerful because most people are very uncomfortable in silence. But if you're the kind of person who's different, because you watch these videos, if you're the kind of person that is comfortable in silence, then you can use it to your advantage, no matter what situation you're in. So someone will say something, for example, they answer one of your questions, but they're not very clear in what they said. If you're not happy with the response, you can just go like, and just sit there in the silence, completely fine, don't break eye contact, or you can if you want to. But what will happen is the other person will feel a little bit uncomfortable in that situation because, well, people don't like silence and they'll speak more, give you more to work with. And if you're paying attention, if you're fully present, then you can pick up on even more through their speech and through the things that they're not saying, through their body language, through the subtle micro expressions that they're making. So it's a very powerful tool to use. Now, the next thing that I'm going to go into is something that, again, is also very simple, but if you're able to use this effectively and be able to do this consciously, and then after doing it consciously, make it part of your daily routine whenever you speak to people, you'll be able to build rapport with people so much easier than you otherwise would have. And that is mirroring. Now, if you've heard about mirroring before, you probably would have thought that it's just about mirroring their body language. So for example, if you're speaking to someone and they put their hand on their chin, then after say 30 seconds, so it doesn't look unnatural, you also put your hand on your chin when you're speaking to them. So that's one powerful thing, because when people see that the body language is the same, they're not going to consciously think this, but in the back of their head, in their unconscious, they'll pick up and go like, this person is just like me. And people like who they're like because it means that that other person can understand them. And that's how you build rapport. The thing is, you can go so much further than just body language. Instead of just focusing on body language, because especially in times where, say, you're on a Zoom call or a Google Meet call, you can't always pick up on the body language that easily. So you can also focus on other things like the voice that they use. So for example, if they're speaking really fast, you can speak a little bit faster too, because you're matching their thinking speed when they're coming up with their thoughts to speak. Or, for example, you can speak loud if they're speaking louder. You can speak quieter if they're more of a soft-spoken person. And what you're doing is you're literally speaking this person's language. You're mimicking their tempo of speech. You're mimicking their speech patterns. If they use a specific word a lot, for example, in my older videos, I used to say the word naturally a lot. And I would say it so many times in a conversation. And it would be funny because if someone else, for example, if you were speaking to me in those times and you use the word naturally in your speech after picking up on the fact that I said it a lot, without me even realizing, I would like you a little bit more. I'd be able to be in more rapport with you because you're literally speaking my language. And the best part about this is that this isn't something that you have to do forever, because what some people might think is, oh, well, wouldn't this make it so that I basically lose who I am? I'm being a chameleon in every single situation, no matter who it is that I'm speaking to. You only actually have to do this at the beginning. So in the first conversation, in the first few conversations. Because normally what will happen in a conversation anyway is that people take turns mirroring each other naturally. It's something that you do. But if you're deliberate about it and you start by going like, okay, let me mirror this person. And then afterwards, you can lead them. So you start by mirroring them and then you can do a specific kind of body language or something like that, or a specific emotion when you're speaking. And the other person, if they're in a good rapport with you, they'll pick up on that too and start to do the exact same thing too because you've built that rapport. It's like if you met someone who spoke French as their native language, but they were just a little iffy on English, but okay on English. And you knew how to speak French too, but your English was better because it's your native language. If you started the interaction with them speaking in French, they're automatically going to think, this person's just like me, that's awesome. And then in the next conversation that you have after that, you can speak to them in English and they'd be happy to, because you built that rapport. So this is a very, very powerful tool to use, not just mimicking body language, but also mirroring the way that they speak, the words that they use, mirroring the specific intonations that they have, how fast they speak, all of those different things. And it'll help you to be that much better, so much better of a communicator and make people trust you so much more because you're actually building the rapport. The last thing that I'll cover for directly building rapport through your external speech is what I call relatability. Now, a lot of people might think that being relatable would diminish the amount of authority that you might have in a situation. And yes, being too relatable will. But if you do it right, then it'll build trust and not take away from the trust that they have in you. So the way that you do this is by making it seem, or not making it seem, like you're 100% perfect. Now, for example, for me, I'm someone who is teaching communication skills. I'm a communication skills coach. The thing is, if I try my best to be 100% perfect in every single video, and I make sure to perfectly cut every single mistake that I make and make it seem like I'm all high and mighty and perfect at everything that I do, then everyone will see through it, obviously, because I'm not 100% perfect. Nobody is 100% perfect. Everyone still makes mistakes, not just when they speak, but in everything that they do. So when you put on this persona of being the 100% perfect authority at whatever you do, people will see through it. They'll go like, oh no, like, this person actually, there's something off about them. It doesn't seem like they actually know what they're talking about. Or there's no way that they're actually that good. And how do you actually fix this through your speech? You see, because you might think that, oh yeah, well, if I go like, oh yeah, I make this mistake all the time. Oh yeah, I mess up all the time. Then people are not going to think that you have authority. And yes, that's true. So one thing that you can do is to utilize storytelling in an effective way. So instead of going like, oh yeah, I'm also bad at that too, because you're not, and you'd be lying in that case. What you can do is tell a story of when you were in that position of the person that you're helping. So say, for example, I was coaching someone on fitness, and instead of going like, oh yeah, I struggle with eating junk food all the time, like it is, yeah, man, I'm just like you. You can be like, nah, when I was starting out, I also struggled with trying my best not to eat Oreos and cookies all the time. And this is what I did to overcome it. That makes you come off as relatable and not 100% perfect, but it's in a way that helps you instead of hurts you. You see, another thing too, besides that, is also when you do make mistakes, to just not make that big a deal out of them. And to just go like, it's whatever, to acknowledge it when it happens. At the beginning of this video, I made a mistake when I spoke. And I just went like, it's whatever, and kept going. And you're still here watching. You see, it's not about being 100% perfect all the time, or even trying your best to minimize mistakes. It's about owning mistakes when they do happen, and then also showing that you did make mistakes in the past, and that you still do in a way that still is showing the authority that you have. You can use it to your advantage. So, if you use storytelling and you acknowledge mistakes in your speech, you'll be a lot more trustworthy than Mr. Perfect. Now, if you implement all of these tactics, not just the external tactics, but also the internal tactics, everything, then you won't have this mismatch between your internal speech and your external speech. And you'll also know specific things that you can do to improve your belief in your rapport. And it'll be so much more easy and reliable for you to build trust with whoever you want to speak to whenever you need to. It might be conscious things that you do at first, but over time, as you practice it more, it'll become unconscious and it'll be something that you can do without even thinking about it. So outside of that, I hope this was helpful. Remember to click the top link in the description if you want to work with me and you want personalized help with improving your communication skills for your business. And then outside of that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And remember, don't overthink it because you're a lot better at speaking than you think that you are. Click this video right here and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good one.